us a chance to see you, me and my partner, Brady Boone. We had a title match this evening right here in Portland. We missed our chance to have the belts around our waist right at this moment.
Brady Boone's life took a heartbreaking turn. And what really makes his story so sad is how fast and out of nowhere his death happened. One moment he was just living his life like any other day, and the next he was gone. It wasn't some long, drawn-out battle or a slow decline. It was sudden, shocking, and completely unexpected. In a world like professional wrestling, where we've seen our fair share of tragic endings, Brady Boone's death still stands out as one of the most unbelievably sudden losses the WWE has ever seen. Brady Boone, whose real name was Dean Peters, sadly passed away in a car accident back in December 1998. He was just 40 years old. It was a terrible loss, not just because he died so young, but because it also put an end to whatever future he might have had in the wrestling world. At the time, he was working behind the scenes as a referee for WCW, still involved in the business he clearly loved. His death wasn't wrapped in controversy or mystery, but it was heartbreaking all the same. It was sudden, it was tragic, and it closed the chapter on a life and career that still had more to offer. When you look at Boone's time in wrestling, especially in the bigger promotions like the WWF, you see a guy who was mostly used as what they call enhancement talent, or more commonly, a jobber. That basically meant he was the one who went out there and lost matches, helping to make the other wrestlers look like stars. It's an important role, no doubt, but it's also one that doesn't get much spotlight. Boone rarely got big storylines, title shots, or moments where he could shine on his own. And while that might not be considered controversial in the wrestling world, it's just how things work sometimes. It had to be tough. Imagine training hard, traveling constantly, and stepping into the ring night after night, only to always play the guy who loses. That kind of thing wears on a person. You could tell he had the skills and the heart, but the opportunities just never really came his way. It adds another layer of sadness to his story, knowing how much more he could have done, if only he'd gotten the chance. Now let's take a look at how Brady Boone's journey in wrestling actually began. Before the name Brady Boone ever flashed across a TV screen, he was just Dean Peters, a gifted athlete from the Pacific Northwest with a background in gymnastics and a dream to make it big in professional wrestling. That dream started to take shape in 1984 when he broke into the business with Don Owen's NWA Pacific Northwest Wrestling. It was here that Dean Peters first stepped into the ring as Brady Boone, a name that would stick with him throughout most of his career. To help build some early buzz, he was even billed as the kayfabe cousin of Billy Jack Haynes, a popular wrestler at the time. It was a small trick used often in wrestling. Link a new guy to an established star and hope some of that spotlight rubs off. That strategy worked to some degree. Boone teamed up with Haynes and got his first taste of gold in 1986, winning the Pacific Northwest Tag Team Championship not once, but twice. His first tag title win came alongside Coco Samoa in March, and the second with Ricky Santana later that year in October. These weren't just forgettable title runs. They were the kind of moments that told fans, hey, this guy can go. Boone was athletic, fast, and had a natural flair in the ring, especially thanks to his gymnastics background. Over the next couple of years, Boone started branching out beyond the Pacific Northwest. He worked in several other NWA territories, including Mid-Atlantic, Central States, and Florida. He even got a shot overseas, wrestling in All Japan Pro Wrestling in 1987, which was a big deal at the time. Japan didn't bring just anybody over. You had to have talent, and Boone definitely had it. Around that same time, Boone began making appearances in the World Wrestling Federation, which was exploding in popularity during the mid-1880s. He officially started wrestling full-time for the WWF on July 2, 1987. And while he wasn't immediately pushed as a top guy, he wasn't exactly invisible either. Boone found himself working as what's known in the industry as an upper-level opener. That meant he was often used in the early matches on a card to get the crowd going. On TV, he was usually the one taking the loss to help build up other stars, which led to him being seen by many as a jobber. But what fans didn't always see were the house shows, those non-televised events where Boone was actually racking up wins. In 1987 alone, he picked up 19 victories on the live circuit, defeating guys like Barry Horowitz, The Gladiator, and Jose Estrada Sr. So while he might not have been winning on TV, he was still putting in work and building his credibility. Despite often being on the losing end of TV matches, Boone did get a few spotlight moments. He challenged the Honky Tonk Man, who was then the Intercontinental Champion, on 2 separate episodes of WWF Superstars, once in December 1987 and again in May 1988. He didn't win, but just getting a shot at a title on TV meant the company saw some value in him. One of Boone's more memorable moments came on October 31st, 1987. He was in a tag team match with Scott Casey against Demolition. After the match, Demolition kept attacking Boone, and it turned into a full-on angle. Billy Jack Haynes, still billed as Boone's cousin, ran in to make the save, and then Ken Patera, Haynes' recent tag partner, joined in. But even with the reinforcements, Demolition destroyed everyone. Boone had to be stretchered out, which helped kick off a new feud between Demolition and the team of Haynes and Patera. It was one of the few times Boone was featured in a meaningful storyline, even if it meant he got beat up in the process. In 1988, Boone kept busy. He won 24 matches that year and ended his run with the WWF with a win over Steve Lombardi in South Bend, Indiana on September 12th. That same year, he also returned to All Japan Pro Wrestling for another tour, though he mostly did undercard matches. By 1989, his appearances in wrestling were starting to slow down. He worked a handful of matches in Florida, and in early 1990, he defeated Iron Mike Sharp at an event for the Trans World Wrestling Federation. Then came one of the more unique and honestly strange chapters of his career. On May 4th, 1990, Boone quietly returned to the WWF and worked several house shows. But by September, something new was in the works. On September 13th, at a house show, Dean Peters stepped into the ring not as Brady Boone, but as a completely new character, Battlecat. This new gimmick had him wearing a cat mask and using his gymnastic skills to highlight his cat-like agility. It was different, to say the least. Still, it wasn't just a one-off. 6 days later, Battlecat made his televised debut and defeated Bob Bradley on Wrestling Challenge. He remained undefeated on house shows, even scoring wins over guys like Paul Diamond and Boris Zhukov. The Battlecat experiment was short-lived, though. For reasons never fully explained, Boone was released from the WWF, and the gimmick was handed over to Bob Bradley, ironically the same guy Boone had just beaten on TV. Under Bradley, Battlecat didn't have the same spark, and the character was soon dropped entirely. It's hard not to wonder what might have happened if Boone had been given more time in the role. His athletic style was a good fit for the character, and maybe with better promotion, it could have caught on. After that, Boone took a brief break from the wrestling spotlight. He popped up again at the Universal Wrestling Federation's only pay-per-view, Beach Brawl, on June 9, 1991. Teaming with Jim Cooper, they lost to the Blackhearts, a short appearance, but a reminder that Boone was still hanging around the scene. Under the new name Firecat, he wrestled in Suncoast Pro Wrestling, a small Florida-based promotion, and even won their tag team championship alongside future star Jerry Lynn. But after dropping the titles, Boone took another step back. In 1992, he resurfaced in Japan, this time bringing the Firecat persona to All Japan Pro Wrestling. On March 4th, he teamed with Richard Slinger in a losing effort against Lieutenant James Earl Wright and Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker. It wasn't a major match by any means, but it showed that Boone was still chasing opportunities, still trying to find a place to shine. His final major run came in World Championship Wrestling, where he returned in 1993 under his old Brady Boone name. On the December 7th episode of WCW Saturday Night, he teamed with Scott Studd, but lost to the team of Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma. Pretty wonderful. He continued to appear in early 1994, even facing a young, stunning Steve Austin on the January 10th episode of Saturday Night. Boone lost as expected, but just being in the ring with someone like Austin showed the trust WCW had in him to help showcase rising stars. His last match came on the September 26th episode of WCW Pro, where he faced Brian Pillman and again took the loss. After that, Dean Peters quietly stepped away from active wrestling, but he didn't leave the business completely. WCW kept him on as a referee, a fitting role for someone who had spent years giving back to the wrestling world in ways that didn't always make headlines. He might not have been the loudest voice in the room or the guy holding the biggest belt, but he was someone the business could rely on. Sadly, that journey came to an end far too soon. In December 1998, Dean Peters, Brady Boone, died in a car accident at just 40 years old. He was still working for WCW at the time, still part of the industry he'd devoted his life to. His death wasn't surrounded by drama or scandal. It was just a horrible, sudden tragedy that left the wrestling world in shock. He didn't get the send-off he deserved. No major tribute, no big farewell match. Just gone, just like that. Looking back on his career, it's easy to see how much heart Boone brought to the ring. He didn't always get the spotlight, and he didn't wear championship gold in the big promotions, but he gave everything he had to wrestling. Whether it was taking a beating to make someone else look good or donning a cat mask just to entertain the crowd, Boone never phoned it in. He was one of those unsung heroes who helped keep the wheels turning behind the scenes. And while his story may not be filled with world titles or main events, it's still one worth telling, because wrestling at its core is built on the backs of guys like Brady Boone. If you like this story, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more wrestling stories like this. Let us know in the comments who you want to hear about next.